I inherited my father's cabin in northern Maine after he passed away. He used to say the winters there were different, colder, quieter, like the snow carried memories instead of warmth. I always thought he was exaggerating. I learned the truth my first winter alone. A few days after a heavy snowstorm, I stepped outside in the early morning, expecting to see a smooth, untouched blanket of white. But instead, the first thing my eyes landed on was a trail of footprints leading straight toward my cabin. What froze my blood wasn't the direction, but the shape. They were bare feet, clear as day, each toe perfectly defined. No shoes, no socks, nothing. Someone had walked through 12 inches of snow, barefoot, in sub-zero temperature. At first, I thought maybe hikers had passed through, desperate or confused. But as I followed the footprints, the situation went from strange to impossible. The footprints walked in a straight, calm line from the woods to the clearing behind my cabin. Then they just ended. No return steps. No path leading away. No signs of someone collapsing or crawling. Just a final footprint. And then untouched snow in all directions. It was like the person walked up to that exact spot and vanished in a thin air. I stood there longer than I should have, feeling a cold breeze cut through my jacket, feeling watched. But I forced myself to shake it off and head back inside. I tried to forget it. I honestly did. But that night, something woke me up. At first, I thought it was wind. But this was different, slow, deliberate, heavy. Footsteps, snow compressing under weight. One step, then a pause. Another, then a pause. They circled the cabin, moving from one side to the other. My heart hammered in my chest. I held my breath. I was too scared to even sit up, and then the footsteps stopped. Right outside my bedroom window. I could hear breathing, slow, wet, icy. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like a person trying to warm their frozen lungs. I don't know how long I stayed frozen under the covers. Minutes? Hours? Eventually, the sound faded, but I didn't dare move until daylight. When the moonlight finally shifted enough for me to gather courage, I stood up and walked to the window. My hands were trembling. I pulled the curtain just a sliver, and there they were. Fresh footprints. Båda footprints. Leading from the forest, circling the cabin, ending right below my window. But again, no footprints going back. It was like something had walked toward me and never left. The next morning, I stepped outside and checked the prints up close. They were deep, clean, sharp edges. Exactly how freshly made footprints look. But here's the part that made me sick. It was almost noon. The sun had been out for hours. Every other print in the yard had softened a little, but these stayed perfect. Frozen solid. Preserved. As if whatever made them wasn't warm-blooded. As if it left no heat behind. I reported it to the sheriff, who took measurements and photos. He told me something I still think about. These prints aren't right. People walk differently when they're freezing. Their toes curl. Their pace shortens. These prints look like someone perfectly relaxed. That doesn't happen in this cold. That night, I slept with my lights on. Or tried to. Just past 3 a.m., my porch creaked. Not from wind, from weight. A slow, heavy step. Then another. It stopped right in front of my door. I didn't hear knocking. I didn't hear movement. Just silence. A silence so thick it pressed against my chest. I don't know what it wanted. I don't know if it was curious, confused, or something worse. Why do know is this? Every winter night after that, something approached the cabin. Sometimes it breathed outside the window. Sometimes it circled the house. Sometimes it left a single footprint on the porch. Always coming toward me. Never walking away. By spring, I packed a bag and left. I told myself I'd return in summer, but I never did. I couldn't. And to this day, every new owner has contacted me about the same thing. Bare footprints appearing in the snow. Always walking toward the cabin. Always stopping right outside a door or a window. Never melting. And never, not once, leaving a trail going back into the woods. I've worked night shifts in a Minnesota hospital long enough to get used to the strange things that happen when the world goes quiet. During winter, the halls feel different, colder, emptier, almost too still. But I always told myself it was just the weather. Until the night the storm hit. A blizzard rolled in with wind strong enough to rattle the windows on the ICU floor. Only a handful of us were on shift, and the entire building felt like it was holding its breath. The lights were dim, machines hummed softly, and outside, nothing but white. It was around 1:40 a.m. when I noticed the door to room 214 was cracked open. That caught my attention immediately because room 214 was empty. No patient, no equipment, just a clean and used room. I walked closer, thinking a cleaner forgot to turn the lights off. But the moment I stepped inside, a wall of freezing cold air hit me so hard I gasped. My breath turned white instantly. Then I saw him. A man stood at the far end of the room, facing the window. Tall, thin, coat reaching down past his knees like something from a different decade. For a second, I thought he was a family member who got lost. That happens sometimes. So I said, "Sir, you can't be in here." Nothing. Not a twitch. Not even a shift of weight. I stepped closer, feeling the cold bite into my skin. It didn't feel natural, more like stepping into a freezer with the door open. "Sir," I said again louder. "Are you all right? You shouldn't be here." This time he moved, just his head. A slow, stiff tilt, like his neck didn't work right. He didn't look at me, but he heard me. I felt it. A warning feeling crawled up my spine. I took a breath and reached for the call button on the wall, thinking I might need security. But before I could press it, the lights flickered just for a heartbeat. In that split-second flicker, everything inside me iced over. The man had no reflection in the window. I froze, and when the lights returned, he was gone. Not moved, gone. The space where he stood was empty. The only sign he had ever been there was the window, fogged heavily, like someone had been breathing against it for hours. I stumbled backward into the hallway, shaking, my teeth chattering. Not from the cold anymore, but from pure fear. I ran to the security desk and begged them to replay the cameras. We checked the footage. I watched myself walk into room 214 alone. No man entered before me. No man left after me. The room stayed empty the entire time. All the monitor showed was a rapid drop in temperature. So fast the thermal sensors glitched for several seconds. I tried convincing myself I was tired, that the storm was messing with my head. But a few days later, during another heavy snowfall, something happened that forced me to accept what I saw. I overheard two older nurses talking quietly, almost whispering. When they saw me, they stopped abruptly. One of them asked, "Ava, you've been doing rounds in the ICU, right? Did anything strange happen in 214? The way she asked it made my stomach twist. I finally nodded. The older nurse let out a slow breath and said, "We've all seen him at some point during blizzards." A tall man in an old coat standing by the window. I felt my chest tighten. She continued, "He died here, long before you started. A power outage during a storm. ICU lost heat. They couldn't move him in time." I didn't respond. I couldn't. She lowered her voice even more. "Some nights, when the snow gets bad, we think he comes back." I didn't want to believe her. I really didn't. But ever since that night, every time it snows hard enough to blind the windows, room 214 turns cold again. Even when the vents are closed. Even when no one goes inside. And sometimes when I walk past on my rounds, I swear I hear something on the other side of the door. The slow, soft sound of someone breathing, fogging up a window that shouldn't be fogged at all. I've gotten used to many things in this hospital, but room 214 during a snowstorm isn't one of them. And deep down, a part of me knows he's still standing there, coat dripping, staring out at the storm, just waiting for winter to take him again. I used to think winter nights were peaceful, silent, calm, safe. But that was before the night I realized that silence can also hide things. Things that shouldn't exist. It happened 3 winters ago when I rented a remote lakeside cabin in northern Michigan. I needed a break from work, from noise, from everything. The place was perfect, snow-covered pines, a frozen lake stretching into the distance, and only one other cabin across the water. That cabin was dark when I arrived. No lights, no car, no smoke from the chimney. Completely empty. Or so I thought. My first night was quiet. Too quiet. Far from any town, you could hear snow settling, trees creaking, even your own breath sounding loud in your ears. Around midnight, I stepped onto the porch just to look at the stars. That's when I noticed it. Across the frozen lake, the lights in the empty cabin flickered on, just for a second, then off again. I squinted, thinking maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me, but the feeling it left in my gut told me otherwise. The next morning, I asked the owner about the cabin across the water. He told me it had been abandoned for years after a fire nearly destroyed the inside. No one stays there, he said. No power either. Lines were pulled down years ago. That should have been the moment I packed my bags. But I didn't. That night, the lights came on again. Only this time, they stayed on. A dim yellow glow filled the windows like old lantern light. It flickered gently, as if someone were moving inside. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Not from the cold, but from the realization that I wasn't as alone as I thought. Around 1 a.m., I heard for the first time a slow, rhythmic tapping. Top, top, top. It echoed across the frozen lake, hitting the silence like a hammer on glass. It sounded like someone knocking on wood. Not frantic, not desperate, just patient. Top, top, top. I leaned forward, tried to pinpoint the sound, when I saw movement in the cabin's window. A silhouette, tall, still, facing my cabin. I stepped back, heart hammering. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light. Maybe a shadow, maybe a branch. But then the silhouette moved again, slowly, almost deliberately, like someone shifting their weight while staring out at me. I shut the curtains and didn't sleep. The next day, I walked out onto the frozen lake to clear my head. The light from my cabin reflected on the ice, but across the lake, the abandoned cabin stood dark and lifeless again. No lights, no movement, no footprints in the snow around it. Nothing. As if nothing had happened. As if no one had been there. But I knew what I saw. By the third night, the tapping changed. It wasn't coming from across the lake anymore. It was closer. Top, top, top. Right behind the cabin. I pressed my back against the wall, heart pounding so fast it hurt. The tapping traveled along the side of the cabin, slow, dragging, like someone was running their fingers along the wooden planks. Then it stopped. A second of total silence. And then, a single knock, right on my door. I froze. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Another knock, louder. I wanted to call the police, but I had no signal, and the nearest station was half an hour away through heavy snow. Every instinct screamed at me not to open the door. Then the doorknob shook. A small, careful twist, as if someone was testing how strong the lock was. I stepped back, holding a kitchen knife, whispering to myself that it was just an animal or the wind or anything else. But wind doesn't jiggle doorknobs. Animals don't knock. And nothing human could be standing outside at those temperatures for so long. After what felt like hours, the tapping stopped. Silence returned. But I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, gripping the knife, watching the door until dawn. When the sun finally rose, I opened the door slowly and stepped out. My breath caught in my throat. There were footsteps in the snow. Human footsteps. Bara footprints. Leading from the lake to my doorstep. They were deep, perfectly shaped, like someone had been standing there a long time. But what terrified me wasn't the prints themselves. It was that they started in the middle of the frozen lake. Not from the edge, not from the forest, but from the exact center. As if someone or something had climbed out from under the ice. My whole body went cold. I followed the prints with my eyes across the frozen lake, all the way to the abandoned cabin. And that's when I saw the figure again, standing in the window, watching me. I didn't bother grabbing anything from inside. I ran. I didn't look back. I drove through the storm until I reached town, shaking so badly I could barely talk to the gas station clerk. I never went back to the cabin, never asked for a refund, never even picked up my belongings. But sometimes when winter hits and the nights get quiet, I swear I can still hear it. Top, 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 like something patient and cold is still looking for me.